Yes, folks, a lot is going on in the world in all kinds of political ways and in all kinds of political news that is coming out of the world, including an attack that is taking place on the Red Sea. So apparently, the Houthis have attacked the Red Sea. And definitely, it says that the Houthi attacks rocking Red Sea trade likely won't end anytime soon. So it definitely looks like there is a number of folks that are looking at this whole notion of what's going on in the Middle East and all in that space. So there's definitely a lot of things that are going on in that lane, just like there are a lot of things that are taking place with the European Union and how they are agreeing to open membership talks with Ukraine. And of course, there have been folks that have been trying to figure out what'll be happening with the trade negotiations that are going on in the, not trade negotiations, but peace negotiations going on in the Middle East, and whether those will take place or not take place. I know I was talking to one of my fellow folks here that gives analysis as well, and they were saying that they had heard that those talks are now apparently, at least for now, dead in the water and all in that space. So it'll be interesting to see what folks' reactions are to what is going on there in the Middle East, to what is happening in the whole notion of the European theater with Ukraine and Russia, and a number of other things that are taking place as well. So definitely it is world politics, and we'll be talking about a number of these world political issues and all along those lines. I just learned that apparently a major hip hop artist is looking to build a 100,000 acre city in the Middle East, which is news to me. But Kanye West has some interesting things that he does all the time, and apparently now he's looking at building a venture there in the Middle East. So apparently he is looking at doing that, and he is going to attempt to build his own city. So maybe he's going to create his own version of Palestine. This could be quite interesting and all in that space. So we'll definitely see if anybody thinks that this is worth something that Kanye is doing. I know that Rick follows some of the amazing stunts, meaning Rick Rosner, that Kanye West is up to, as well as some of the other things that are taking place just in politics in general. So I want to bring up both Sasha Stars, who was telling me what he had heard about this whole notion of the Middle East peace talks, as well as Rick Rosner. And of course, we'll get into a number of these discussions, and I'm definitely interested to hear what Sasha had heard, because apparently, and then I'll get to what was going on with Kanye. But Sasha, you just told me that you had heard that those peace talks were no longer going to be taking place. So if you'll share what you've recently learned, and I'm sure that our listeners would be interested in that as well.
Well, I just heard it on CNN, to tell you the truth, and all they said is that Hamas announced that until Israel will completely stop its military operation in Gaza, there will be no further talks about hostages. That's all what they said. No comments. And what would be my comments? Look, if they feel that they are in a position to dictate something, well, some people may disagree with that. Some people may agree with that. It's really, the ball now is in the court of Israeli defense apparatus, and we'll see how they will respond to that.
Yeah, it'll be interesting as I'm looking up at the Times of Israel. They just said what you just said. They said that Hamas says no hostage negotiations unless fighting in Gaza stops, and Israel apparently said no chance of that. So the terrorist group said it won't take part in talks as it sends Ismail Haniyeh to Cairo and Herzog to French officials has said Israel has made it clear it is prepared for humanitarian pause. So I do know a lot of people in the world are asking for that humanitarian pause, but Israel earlier today firmly rejected a Hamas demand to permanently halt fighting before releasing any more hostages being held by terrorists in Gaza, as talks in Cairo for a truce deal appear to make little progress. So definitely does look like they're going back and forth and trying to figure out who's going to be the broker of this deal and all along those lines. So what are you finding out from the West Coast, Rick, and any thoughts around this
You said
possibility
in
of
the
a
intro, you said there's a lot of stuff going on in the world. And I miss, there have been some times when there's been less going on in the world. Um, I I used to have a big neck, which I liked, but
Mhm.
then Trump became president and I just pooped all the time. It really, I got irritable bowel syndrome and I lost like 20, 25 pounds. Too much going on in the world. I miss not knowing any of the Middle Eastern geography, except kind of where Israel was, but now I have to learn where Yemen is and, where Jordan is. And, I, the whole, yeah, Israel's just going to keep plowing forward. There are about 30,000 Hamas members, and supposedly Israel's only killed about six or captured about 6,000 of them. So there's still a while to go. Um, and Israel's strategy does not seem to be super hostage focused. They may say they are, but they're going in and they're invading. Um and
Yeah,
Hamas
I
is,
hear you. Along those same lines, and I brought it up earlier. Along those same lines that I brought up earlier, and I'd love to hear both of your thoughts around this because he has been floated as a presidential candidate, and stranger things have happened, and all along those lines. But apparently, Kanye West, the great hip hop artist, has got a grand ambition. He's had several grand ambitions, and apparently, this one is definitely not is taking the cake because the rapper, known for his boundary pushing projects and unreleased albums, is now setting his sight in an entire self-sustaining city in the Middle East called Drome. So that's right. While we're in the middle of this Middle East conflict, apparently this
a
rapper
lot
that
of
is
people think that Kanye is bipolar. um that he, there's some things that, like, remember when Lindsay Lohan and Amanda Bynes got crazier and crazier, and you couldn't, I worked on a comedy show, and when people are a little crazy, you can make jokes about them, but then they get so crazy that goes from being funny to being sad. And, you know, I don't know, Kanye's not quite in the so crazy it's sad, but at the same time, like the anti-Semitic stuff that he was like
mhm,
espousing a couple of years ago, took it out of the funny realm. But I
yeah,
did some math. Like if he's going to try to do 100,000 acre um, nation in the
mhm.
Mid East, that's 150 square miles.
Mhm.
So it's not a small area.
No,
Um,
the matter of fact, the article says it will be twice the size of New York City, and New York City is a very big area, so 100,000 acres
yeah,
will be
I
twice as
don't know
big.
where he's going to get the real estate to do that.
Who knows? Maybe Sasha, who is a business and investment person, has some ideas because apparently he's seeking collaborators and he's looking at project managers, engineers, architects, contractors, and builders to join in this ambitious endeavor. So, is this a thing that you might have some of your investment people speculate on and get involved in, Sasha? Because apparently they want to build a big city, twice the size of New York City, in the Middle East. So, you're in the investment space. So, are you going to endeavor to get involved in this project?
I've never been involved in any projects with anti Semitic people,
Mhm.
therefore, I don't wish him well.
I can understand that, and definitely he's had some very anti-Semitic views, and all along those lines. So I can understand why you would not be wanting to get involved in that particular situation. But definitely, I'm sure he's probably tried to backwalk whatever he said, and I don't remember his exact quotes, but I do remember that they were very anti-Semitic and all along those lines. So it'll be interesting.
Marcus, there are enough anti Semites who will support him and give him some money and do whatever crazy things they want to do. Keep me out of it, please.
We will keep you out of it. We will definitely do that. So we will not have you doing anything along those lines and
So
everything.
you know that the Kardashians are very tolerant people. They give their friends and their spouses a lot of latitude in behavior. And so
Mhm.
for Kim Kardashian to not be able to stay married to Kanye speaks a lot for how much of a pain in the butt he must have become.
Good point there. That's a very valid point all along those lines. Apparently, we had talked just about world politics, and you had mentioned about how there are a number of things that are going on in that space. Even if we want to go to another part of the world, let's go to Britain this time. Apparently, the government there has rolled back on plans to hike the salary that Britons need to bring family members to the UK to £38,700 next spring. So the increase from the current level of £18,600 was announced earlier this month as part of a plan to lower legal migration. So I was just wondering what our thoughts around that, because the new threshold will initially be set at £29,000 with further increases at unspecified dates thereafter. So it looks like they are trying to find ways to maybe lower some of that legal immigration by charging these different figures, but I'm not as aware as I should be of the pound to dollar differentiation. But is this something that is going to be a popular thing in the whole area of London, or is this going to fall on deaf ears?
So my wife and I have been researching this for years because our kid lives in London
Right.
and we want to move there to be closer to her. Also want to have like a second place to live, um, where, if Trump gets a second term, we don't have to listen to him every day. And England has been getting, stricter and stricter about who gets to move there. Now, the current law says you can live there for up to 6 months at a time, but then you have to move back to where you came from for 6 months. And unless you have special dispensation, unless you marry a Brit, they used to have what are called golden visas, where a lot of countries, if you bring them enough money, they will let you move there and eventually become a citizen. And England's been getting rid of more and more of that. When they used to be part of the EU, and then they did Brexit. So now you can't become a British citizen just by being an EU citizen. So yeah, they're making it tougher and tougher. £38,000 is, I don't know, around $47,000 a year.
Hmm. Okay, so that's what that translates to and everything. Hey, one of the things that I know everybody's talked about, even on World Politics and World Edition, is whether sanctions work or don't work. And apparently, China and Russia, and I know that even you, Sasha, that is part of what your subject matter is with the Ukraine, Russia, China show and everything. But apparently, they're taking victory laps over these failed Western sanctions because I guess they're thinking that they aren't working. Because even Xi Jinping is hailing Russia's cooperation as a record trade has beat $200 billion target. That's a whole lot of money and everything. But I just wonder, is this something that we need to pay attention to, or did these even kind of like sanctions even bother to stop any of the kind of terrorist and totalitarian governments that exist out there when we try to govern and give sanctions against them? And this is for anybody, including Kim, if they've got any thoughts as to whether sanctions even bother to work.
I think that the way the sanctions are being carried now, they don't really work. They make some kind of some calamity, some kind of a strange things that you have to think about it, and you have to find a way how to avoid the sanctions. It's kind of neither here nor there, and it's a pity because. But as you know, it's not new phenomena. If you take Iran, how many years there are sanctions against Iran? Nobody even remembers. It's 10 years, 20 years, 50 years, 175 years. Nobody cares anymore because Iran figured out how to live with the sanctions. They're doing quite well. They're trying now to get the nuclear weapons, and they're doing okay. There is no uprising against the rulers of Iran, as far as I know. They're being supported by Russia, China, etc. They are supporting all the terrorists around Israel, whether it's Hamas or Hezbollah or I don't know who else is there. Oh, this Yemen. I forgot the names. Yes, it'll be around for another couple of weeks, probably no more. But that's about it. So obviously, sanctions, generally speaking, not working.
We've been hopeful about Iran for decades because before 1979, when they fell to, strict Islamic fundamentalists, it was a very westernized country. People always talk about how in the 70s, the women walking around in Iran wearing mini skirts. And there's a lot of hopeful thinking. Like this latest, over the past, I don't know, almost year, the Iranian police killed a young woman for not wearing her head covering properly. And there have been huge protests and a bunch of violence. And everybody's kind of cheering, hoping that, well, maybe this means that there will be finally a counter revolt. And this, things like that happen every few years
But
and
Rick,
never comes to fruition.
In that same line, and that's something that I mentioned briefly on World Edition, but we didn't really get to it. And I don't know if you or Sasha or even Kim have any thoughts about it. But there's this notion of the United States and the West being the world police, and all along those lines. And apparently, Iran just recently hung a child bride for murdering their husband, despite the international calls for leniency. And I don't know the nature of all of the case, but I do know that they have some very strict laws in some of those Middle Eastern countries. And definitely, even Nikki Haley is saying that Iran is using their proxies to do their dirty work. And definitely, we know that some Iranian women were forced into marriage as children, and and one was being held in prison for murdering her husband. And this Wednesday, she was executed, despite calls from human rights groups for leniency. So, how much should we be trying to be the world's police, particularly since a lot of these cultures are different than our cultures and have different rules and different ways of handling things? So, just wondering how much should we be dealing with this? Matter of fact, UN Human Rights in their Twitter said, "We are alarmed by the execution of Samara Sabzian over alleged killing of her husband, whom she was forced to marry at the age of 15. We again urge Iran to establish a moratorium on all executions with a view to abolishing the death penalty." We took out the death penalty here in the United States and everything. So, what is our thoughts about us being the world police?
I don't know. In addition to being I think we do better maybe by exporting our dreams rather than being world police. Like that, for 100 years, we've, been the producer of the most persuasive entertainment in the world. And that's, you know, often given people a desire for modernity. There are 1.4 billion, I think, Muslims in the world, and most of those Muslims, like, most Christians, don't want to be constantly hassling with the religious prohibitions, but we can't police those out of existence. But if we can present a persuasive argument for living a modern lifestyle being more just enjoyable, that's the, I don't know, way to win over the world.
Yeah, and along
Uh,
those same lines, go ahead, Kim. Kim, were you going to say something?
oh, I thought you said Sasha. So I want to interject in here that we're talking about all of these things that go on, and you know it just troubles me and concerns me that we even have things that we call crimes of war, yet war itself is not considered crime, and war itself mangles and kills bodies, and how can you define what's a crime in war when you don't even define war as being a crime? I think it's men just enjoying gladiator days, and they think, with this war, if we just control it and put some rules here, there's no conscious mind anymore. Nobody's thinking about anything. And, when we get into talking about some politics and about women's rights and, did she have a right to do what she did? I mean, I don't know. I didn't live her shoes. I didn't have to live in every day of what she does. But one of the things that is disturbing me is, women who are having problem pregnancies and cannot get a early abortion because of the laws in the state of Texas, and they have to petition the state attorney general. And there was a long conversation about this with women on the public national news, which I enjoy listening to because it's about as non-biased as we are. And it was women that were saying, yeah, I had to file a lawsuit. The doctors are afraid in Texas. The women who can afford to leave the state, and if they're having problem pregnancies, then they go and they get the medical care that they need. But it's the women who can't afford to do this. And this is one of the concerns that they were talking about, and I think that this law or these laws sanctioned in different states are hurting our country. They're not helping our country. And any time you restrict the right of any human, whether it be a woman or a person of a race or a gender, you're hindering the whole race itself. You're hindering humanity. And they took these women's rights away, and now they have to sue to do what's right for their body. And this woman who had this lawsuit, that killed her husband, and I don't know the whole story, but perhaps her life was just a living hell, I mean, if you've ever understood domestic violence, which many men and people live in a bubble and they have no idea that domestic violence exists, and I trust me, I know, because I met a couple of people at UNC Chapel Hill after a meeting, and they had no idea. Oh, don't they do something about that? No, they don't. So I don't think laws are instituted anymore to protect humanity or people's equal rights. It's all about a political agenda. And that's how I'm segueing back into this politics thing. So everything that's happening today is more about somebody's political agenda rather than what's right for humanity. And I think we need to evaluate that a little bit closer. The other thing in world news, and I don't know if you brought it up, is Thailand has approved lesbian, gay, bi, and trans marriages. So same-sex marriages, or the right of a lesbian, gay, bi, and trans to be unioned in marriage. And I think that's a big step for humanity, and that shows an open mind of that country that other countries don't have. Yes, Rick?
Also, the Pope says that he blesses gay unions.
Yeah, as long as they don't, love the way people twist words, right? Everyone's got to tap dance and bypass the truth. But he's going to bless the same-sex unions as long as they don't use the terminology of marriage as it's written in the book. So, it's just a book. It's just a Bible. It's just religion as far as I'm concerned. It has nothing to do with the union of two souls, but, it means a lot to other people. But religions don't mean anything to me, especially ones who, teach people to do hateful things to other people. So,
Yeah, but along those same lines, and I'd love to hear Toby's thoughts around this. I know that one of the great jokes, and I know that Rick knows it as well, is that a lot of times when people are thinking about the LGBT community and some of the religious right wants to attack them, they will always make that notion that the Bible talks about Adam and Eve and not Adam and Steve. And that is the running joke that has always been out there for a number of years and all along those lines. So I was just wondering, what is our answer to those folks that don't want to acknowledge the fact that it is part of society and that it needs to be recognized as part of society? Because you do have some folks that want to think that their way is the only way to go. I've told y'all before that I have an issue with some religious folks that are my way or the highway kind of evangelists and everything. But I don't know that everybody has that same issue that I have when people tell me that their way is the only way to get to heaven. And I just personally find that hard to
The-
believe, but I could
Well,
be proven wrong.
the easiest
I
answer
love most of the religious books, but go ahead.
the easiest answer to that, Mark,
Mhm.
it's not on the top 10 list.
No.
There's a thing in science that people who look at the history of science say when new things come along, like quantum mechanics or relativity, often the way those things become the dominant point of view isn't because they present more persuasive evidence, even though they do, but the thing that you need to happen is for the old scientists to die off. And with a lot of these, the arc of the moral universe that MLK Jr. talked about, a lot of the turning of that arc depends on old assholes passing away.
I mean, think about it this way. Way back in the day, it used to be Greek mythology. Nobody believes that Zeus is up there anymore, but hey, that's what a religion was back in the day. Same
Well, it
thing
depends
with,
on what religion you're in.
but that's the thing is that religion is a good thing to help people find their inner peace. But again, it's just one of it wasn't on the 10 Commandments, so it's not on the top 10 list. So why are we worried about it?
Right.
And it's actually not even listed in the Bible. Homosexuality,
Daddy,
transgenderism, all the other stuff, that wasn't a thing. And then on top of that, if you think about the actual December 25th, which was actually not the birth of Christ, which is the pinnacle of of all Christianity, that's where it didn't happen the 25th of December.
Wait.
And there weren't. I mean,
They're stories. Okay,
date
they are historical stories that document things, but they have absolutely nothing to do with anything of what, if you believe in a God, what God said. God gave commandments, like you said. There are 10 commandments that He gave, but actually, if you read them, I think man kind of mistranslated them because they kind of conflict each other. But then they go into writing their book, and then they preach their book, and their book is the word or a bylaw. To me, it's just a bylaw, their bylaws. But God said, "Thou shalt not kill." Boom, do it. Don't kill. But then what do? You sit there and you teach your people, kill anyone that isn't of your religion, or kill anyone that doesn't abide by this, or kill a woman who has extramarital relationship, but don't kill the man, but kill the child, stone the person who does this. It's all kill, 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 when God said don't kill. So I don't understand religion when it comes down to here are the laws that a God made, and then they go, well, we all believe in the same God, but we kind of divided by church because we have our own different perspectives. Okay, fine, you have your own different perspectives, your own different stories, but I think it's egos. Okay, I think it goes beyond pride, and I don't think there's anything wrong with pride, and it's definitely not a deadly sin. I think ego is the deadly sin. And I think it's their egos, and they want to be more than what God was. And that's where you get all of these influctuations that come in. But in the United States, we say separate church from law, right? That
We
you
say that, but I
separate
don't
the
know if we
two,
always do
separate
that.
church and state, and we don't. Every law that we've been getting so far has something to do with someone's religion. And it shouldn't. It should have absolutely nothing to do with. In fact, this abortion law. Fine, if you're going to say women can't have abortion because you say that's a life, then why isn't it taxed? Why isn't that life being taxed? Why isn't there a tax deduction? There's not.
Funny thing is,
There's not.
even with the abortion thing, Kim, in the Bible, the Bible doesn't talk about conception. It talks about birth. That is actually that's not. It doesn't talk about conception. So that's not even in the Bible. So when you're talking about life begins at conception, that's not in the Bible. Not at all.
It talks about birth.
No.
Exactly.
No,
Hey guys,
hold
I
on a
just
second.
wanted to wish
Hold on
I
a
just
second.
wanted
Wait
to
a
wish
minute.
everyone a happy holidays. I'm gonna have to get a new machine because my camera's not working on the machine. So
No,
I just
no
wanted to
problem.
wish everyone.
Happy
Hi,
holidays to
Steve.
you as well. But
It was
wait
great
a minute.
seeing you today.
Yep,
Yeah.
I might be calling on my phone, and hopefully I'll have a new machine. But I'll be out of pocket until I get, because this camera's not working. So I'm out, and Have a good holidays, and I'll see you guys in January after the new year. And
Sounds good and everything. But
Thank you.
yep.
I did have a question, two questions that you just raised, and I don't know the answers because even though I went to a Jesuit university, I do not claim to be a biblical scholar or anything along those lines. But Jacoby, isn't the Immaculate Conception what in the Bible? Because I thought that was the whole notion of how Jesus came about and all along those lines. And so that was the one question I had. And the other, which is a different kind of question, is it seems to me that if I remember reading the Bible, and this is where I think a lot of religions get in trouble, that talks about what are you going to do for the least of these, and I think a lot of even our churches don't do a good job of addressing the least of these. They oftentimes are condemning the least of these, and they're not helping them with their homeless issues or their housing. Well, I said they're homeless, housing issues or their food issues or a number of other issues, and that's an issue that I have with some of our church folks is that they don't always address what they claim to be about and all along those lines. But I don't know y'all's thoughts about either one of those.
Yes,
In terms of the Immaculate Conception, it's a name. I mean, we don't. December 25th isn't the Immaculate Conception of Jesus Christ. No, it's the birth.
Right.
So I'm writing a novel set in the near future, and in the future, there are two battling ideas of Jesus. There's one that's called, in the future, Old Jesus, which is the guy who has long hair and holds lambs and is nice to everybody. And then the more belligerent evangelicals have real Jesus. Real Jesus has a crew cut, and he has an AR-15, and he's not so nice to everybody.
If Jesus were here today, I don't think he'd be nice to everybody right now because nobody's nice to anybody. I think he would try to set the example and then get tired of it. But I think that, a lot of people don't believe that Jesus existed, and that's fine. And again, these are just stories. They're just books that were written that lay a timeline of history, right? And it's mostly man trying to control man. The King James Bible, most of what he writes and preaches was to control his army, right? So that he can maintain control. And I mean, I've spent years talking to people who were historians, who did a lot of research on the Bible and taught it, but also did a lot of historical research. And at the end of the day, that if we're really to follow and abide by a God, if you believe God existed, nobody that even myself, we're all failing to follow his 10 commandments. And we need to focus on that.
Yeah. Well, they
Not
say
that I
most
believe
people,
that they're real either, but
they say most people are failed individuals, and that none of us are living up to the potential that we should in that sense and everything. But the show is called World Politics and all along those lines, and there is definitely not just here in the United States, but around the world, this notion of evangelicals and people that are very much devout in whatever their beliefs are and all along those lines and everything. It can be everybody from the Muslim community to the Jewish community to definitely some in the Christian community. So I just wondered your take on the importance of religious in the political landscape, because a lot of times, as we've said on this show and a number of other shows, a lot of wars are based on religious ideology. So I just wondering, will this be a problem that we're going to have to address for a long time, or how would we address it? Because it does seem like a lot of the wars are based on religious ideology.
So in the 1970s, well-funded conservative think tanks studied which voters can be mobilized and made angry and manipulated. And they found out that low information voters, that is people who, that's a euphemism for dumb voters, is a big demographic you can go after, and fundamentalist Christian voters. And we're looking at the product of 50 years of the Republican Party, like pandering to and making awful evangelicals and not smart people. And they've painted themselves into this corner where the lunatics have taken over the party.
And I agree with you on that. I think the lunatics have. We were having a good discussion today about, Nikki Haley. And if, Trump is eliminated, that puts Nikki Haley probably in the lead for the Republican Party. And people are taking bets that if this happens, and I don't know how, I would have to really look at things. And she's not my first choice. But they say that she will beat Biden by at least 4. So, what are y'all's thoughts on that about having Nikki? Yeah, Rick.
Well,
I can't see.
Now maybe it's wishful thinking, but I increasingly disbelieve the polls because people who aren't lunatics are increasingly unlikely to say yes to taking polls. When they cold call you on your phone, nobody's got any patience for that. So I hope that the people answering the polls are just all a bunch, or that they're more just lunatics who don't really represent voters, and that we really don't know who the voters prefer until the voting happens.
Right. I mean, but I think it was interesting. They weren't talking about polls. They were talking about odds, more of odds than polls. And
well, okay, let me talk about,
wait,
I know a lot about the odds. The Vegas odds, the odds against Trump are 125 right now.
Right.
That means if he wins, you win your buck back and another $1.25. The odds are worse for Biden. If he wins, you win your dollar and another $2. And Nikki Haley's odds just improved, going from you win $7 to win $6 if she wins. So she is now, I believe, according to the online bookies, she's in 3rd place.
That's what I heard. Mm-hmm.
And I mean, like I said on World Edition, she has been doing some very heavy advertising. Like I said, I sometimes spending way too much time watching old crime novels. Crime TV shows, and I have definitely seen a uptick in her commercials that are painting her in a positive nature as being a stronger candidate, one, to beat Biden, and two, the better candidate versus Trump. And a lot of that is around her leadership abilities and some of the other things that she's got going on.
She looks better than Trump and Biden. Biden just looks like hell. He can't help it. And Trump doesn't look great either. And she's younger. She looks better. Her record is pretty Trumpy. She was Trump's ambassador to the UN. And if she's going to have to, when scrutiny, if she turns out to be any kind of close to front runner, her record will be scrutinized when the majority of voters start paying a little attention, and we'll see if she can overcome her record.
The record will be interesting to see if she can manage that or not. One of the things we've talked about, and this comes back to world politics and everything, and I'd definitely want to hear from everybody, including Sasha, but I'll start with Jacoby because he oftentimes brings it up and everything. This notion of humanitarian assistance. And I know a lot of people are wanting humanitarian assistance, both in Israel and for the Palestinians, as well as even in Ukraine. But apparently the U.S. is expressing concerns over a draft resolution calling for a suspension in fighting and an increase in humanitarian assistance for Gaza. They're arguing that the proposal of a UN-created monitoring mechanism for aid going into the Gaza Strip could slow down the delivery of critical assistance. And I do know that sometimes, whether it is the wrong people getting the assistance or whether it is mismanagement of assistance, that becomes a concern and everything. So I was wondering, are we, as the United States, being overly concerned about the mechanisms to get this assistance, and how much should we be concerned about humanitarianism in these war-torn areas? And that's just two of them. There are several of them around the country. So, Jacoby, take a stab, and maybe Sasha's got some.
I just wanted to quickly touch back on the Nikki Haley thing. The tough part, we have to be. This is why I said earlier at the earlier show, we have to be honest about our society. Nikki Haley, yes, would win if she were up against Biden. But the problem is, being honest with our society, is the Republican Party ready for a woman president? That's the honest thing. because if you think about it, I mean, yes, all of her attributes and everything puts her at the moderate level, and she would actually win in a head to head with Biden just because Biden is not bringing out people. So a lot of people will stay home, and Nikki will bring out, of course, the independents because they want to have the first woman and vote for the first woman. That is a big thrill. Honestly, that's what helped out Obama in a lot of ways because they wanted the first African American. That was a big thing, and we cannot overlook that. But one of the also the big things is to get that actual nomination to beat out Trump. She would have to convince a lot in that society, in that grouping, that are taking away women's rights if they are okay with answering to a woman. That is a reality that I don't think the GOP or part of our society is willing to accept, and why she probably will not win the nomination over Trump or even DeSantis, just because she is female, and I don't think that society wants that.
There's also a little bit of racism involved in the
exactly.
Her real first name. People, semi-racist people like to bring up is Nimrata, not Nikki. And there's one more thing that if Trump doesn't get the nomination, does he really go away or does he run third party? Because as long as he's running, he's raking in tens of millions of dollars a month, and he likes and needs the money.
What if they're?
Yep. And
what about the fact that they've been disqualifying him from some states? I don't believe in disqualifying people based on certain things. I mean, I could understand if he did something. Well, he has, but I truly believe if somebody wants to run and they're paying to run, just let them run, because I mean, isn't that the freedom of election and democracy? I mean, here's what's going to happen. Trump's not going to run. He's going to say, you know what, and the whole country is going to write him in. Like all of his fans and the trumpets are going to write him in, because you have a right to write in a vote. And
Oh, I'm sorry.
Go ahead.
I was just going to say the tough part is it is a rallying cry, and everything he does for his fans and those that are sitting wavering, it's a rallying cry. And yes, a lot of people write him in, but I think according to the law, if he's taken off the ballot, his write-ins don't count. So if I remember, that's the last I heard from some election lawyer that, hey, that if he's excluded off, he cannot be accepted on that write-in ballot. However,
interesting.
We're at a point in our society where we are saying that a president or somebody running for presidential office is above the law. That's the scary part that we are at.
We're stupid.
Yep.
There's another. The Supreme Court likes to justify its decisions by saying it's leaving it up to the states. And we'll know in a month. They have to rule on this pretty fast, but they may throw it back to the states, saying whatever each state decides about putting Trump on the ballot will stand. And so you could have like 3 or 4 different rules about what happens to Trump, whether Trump's on the ballot, and what happens to the votes for Trump, which I would be delighted with, because then it turns back into the 1992 election when Clinton got elected with like 43% of the vote, because Ross Perot got 19% of the vote and took more votes away from the Republicans.
But think about also another thing to think about, that's how crazy our politics are, because not only what Mark brought up about the, how the blockade that's going on, and trying to figure out how to make the humanitarian aid go through, which is being blocked by both Hamas and Israel, but how in our society right now, people are more upset at Trump getting taken off the ballot for breaking the law, and not upset about Trump, the leading candidate, quoting Hitler. How can you say that you are, oh, we're pro-Israel, but I'm going to vote for this dude who's quoting Israel or quoting Hitler? How?
That's how sick our society has become. We are sick. I think COVID did something to a lot of the brains of people, and having to stay inside and not engage with humanity, and the empathy level dropped. And then you got Trump, being angry, and it's always one upping and this, and I'm better than that. Hey, you know what just scared me recently? Did you hear about the cross burning here in North Carolina?
I can't give it to COVID. Trump came before COVID.
I know Trump came before, but I
And what
think
you're
COVID
talking
did
about,
help.
that
But
cross
did you
burning,
hear about the recent cross burning here in North Carolina? I mean, the KKK is starting to rattle around again. It's scary.
that is because, don't
It's
get me
scary.
wrong, Trump did, and this is why when he got in office, and many African Americans and many LGBTQ, a lot of people were scared. This is why, because again, Trump did not create racism. Racism has been there for years,
Right. I get it.
but Trump gave it a megaphone and gave it a
Yes.
platform.
Yes, he
And
did.
once he gave it that platform, that brings about the burning of the crosses. That brings about, honestly, the quoting. That's going to jump. Him quoting Hitler is going to make anti-Semitic problems and assaults skyrocket. I mean, it's just the attacks on the immigrant population that happened because Trump. I mean, that skyrocketed because of Trump. The hate crimes skyrocketed because of his words. But people are not willing to accept that. Again, the attacks on women skyrocketed because of.
Oh yeah, that
I mean, people are accepting that he is.
hate.
Oh well, hey, he didn't really sexually abuse. Yes, he did. He was so.
Just the hate crimes in general skyrocketed. Yes, Rick.
So one thing is that social media gives dumb, angry, racist people a more powerful ways to reinforce and excuse their behaviors. That it used to be, if you wanted to like share hate with people across the country in the 60s, you had to use the US mail, which is slow and a pain in the butt. So that's thing one. Thing two is we have a much older, people are living longer thanks to compared to the 30s, 40s. And I don't know that anybody's done a study as to whether, if you've got I'm an older American myself, and I get hit with all these scammy offers, charity offers, cold calls, because I still have a landline. There are tens of millions of older Americans who have mild cognitive decline. And that is a manipulatable demographic. Fox News appeals to people with, simple messaging. And I don't know if the shift is real, whether people living longer means that you have dumber people, more dumb people out there, because people in their 60s, 70s, 80s, often many of them obese, are dumber.
And I agree. Even I make a lot of dumb mistakes right now. So, but I think people have become less empathetic to humanity. There's just less concern of consequences. People will just say things. It's horrible. It's horrific. It's very concerning when you sit here and you listen and you hear to all of the things that are going on. And media itself has just become a big bundle of propaganda and fake news and lies. It's horrible, and nobody's accountable.
Social media is a huge force for selfishness.
Yes.
That the personalized information feed that you get during every waking minute makes people feel special about themselves. And before social media, there was reality TV. Ozzy Osbourne and his family, a bunch of dopes. Just it's crazy how dumb Ozzy Osbourne is. Probably because he started off dumb and then he did a ton of drugs and then he got a reality show and suddenly made like more than $100 million. And people looked at him and other reality stars in the 90s and were like, if these idiots can become 100 millionaires, then I deserve to become a millionaire too.
But before we get to that, and definitely I'm going to turn it over to Sasha, may have some thoughts about a number of these conversations we've had as well. By the way, Sasha, just want to let you know that the show that is following us, which is the Coco McMillan Show, her guest is actually from your neck of the woods. So she's going to have Marissa Nicole, a gospel singer from Toronto. So literally one of your compatriots will be joining her show in about 10 or 15 minutes, and they'll be talking about the music scene. And I know that that's your neck of the woods as well. So just wanted to let you know that if you decide to keep on Pod TV, you'll see one of your compatriots in about 10 or 15 minutes because they're getting ready to do that interview. And I'm going to have to bounce off, as I oftentimes do on World Politics, and turn it over to Kim for the closeout and all along those lines. But just wanted to share that with you and all along those lines. And just really quickly, Jacoby, while I'm thinking about it, earlier at the beginning of the show, I had mentioned that Kanye is buying 100,000 acre land, twice the size of New York City, and this was before you joined on. So are you going to go and join Kanye in this investment in the Middle East? Because he says he's going to build this big property in the Middle East, and he's going to buy some city out there and turn it into a city. And I know that you're not necessarily a fan of Kanye either. So are you going to head over there and join this 100,000 acre city that Kanye says he wants to build in the Middle East?
No, he's anti-Semitic. He's the dude that says that slavery was a choice. No, I ain't messing with that dude. He's one of them guys. He's one of those black guys that make racists feel comfortable being racist.
That and that's scary that people do that. It would be nice if people could just unite and be kind rather than wish ill will on so many people, and that it would be nice if peace would be brought back to our earth a little bit. There's just way too much. Venezuela's got contention right now. So yes, Rick.
So you were talking about COVID, and there's plenty of evidence that COVID, especially repeated infections with COVID, gunks up your brain and causes a lot of little mini strokes across it. And I don't know if anybody's done this study, but one of the most fun dementias is frontal lobe dementia. And by fun, I mean not so fun. Your frontal lobe is the part of your brain that is the cop. It tells you to behave and act like a decent person. And often when people get frontal lobe dementia, they like a upstanding doctor might suddenly turn into a gangster drug dealer who trades drugs to prostitutes. And there have been many examples of people just becoming flat out criminals once their frontal lobe goes away. And somebody needs to study if COVID, attacks your frontal lobe and is kind of turning us all into mini gangsters.
I don't know about that. I mean, the problem that we had for a while, again, all these things we've had, we'll go to AI, for example. AI doesn't have a frontal lobe, doesn't have anything. AI goes straight to the dark side. Google used to have Google Dreams. That was one of the first AI artwork things that got put up there. AI Dreams went dark quick. It was freaky. But what did it do? What does AI do? It takes the information that it's getting from the internet and all these social media platforms and everything else, combines it into one, and then what does it create? It creates that image, a dark image. Same thing with AI when it takes the information from, when Bing released theirs and Bing's bot wanted the individual to divorce his wife and all this other stuff. It went dark because of the information that it grabbed from the internet. That's us giving the information to the AI and it goes dark. It's not that the AI is now being attacked. It's just we humans tend to lean towards destructive mentality in the first place, but we learn not to destroy as we grow. But it's more fun. I mean, look at teenagers. They do all the spray painting. It could be the most beautiful, wall. I mean, this beautiful building somebody just put up had this great wall. That no, they go and tag it and put up this artwork. Or somebody has this car, they break into it because of, oh, it's going to be fun to mess with this car. We are a destructive people, and it's just we learn to be better. And I don't think we can, I don't want to blame it on COVID, because I think it's just our natural habits. And because of individuals that got put in positions of power that amplify those habits, like a Trump, the Stephen Miller, the other Grudge Report, all these people. I mean, look at CPAC. CPAC is crazy. They're talking about the genocide of the trans community. They're talking about killing all these people. Oh, we don't. And that happened before COVID. So it's just, we're a destructive people. And I think, we just got to figure a way to do as Kim said, go back to peace. But the problem is peace doesn't make money.
So centaurs are beings that are half man, half horse. There's a futurist, the guy I like the best, who talking about the future is Cory Doctorow, talks about reverse centaurs that are half human, half AI, that the people in the near future who are best at making strategic decisions using AI are going to be the ones in charge. And as Toby's saying, if they're using, dark, horrible information, that's not a good thing.
What's really even freakier, because like I shared with you, Kim, the other day, is there has actually been a breakthrough in AI where AI is now self-replicating and making itself better. There's a company that's actually created that. Think of how freaky that is. So now we've got singularity coming closer and closer.
Singularity, yeah.
So that same guy, Cory Doctorow, says that the AI explosion is actually a bubble, and it's BS, because the billions of dollars it takes to build really effective AI, they can't get it's too expensive. They won't be able to have business models that make it pay off.
Think of a business model that jumps on Sasha's lane, the stock market. Where's billions and trillions of dollars? You can find money anywhere, and the AI is actually being used matter of fact, I just watched a story today that there's an airplane company it's a travel company where they have this AI airplane pilot. So it just flies you, and you buy a ticket on it, and it just flies you somewhere with no human interact. That's what's coming. So you can build a model around AI, and you can build a business model. So I'm sure, and there was I think it was Northwestern, or there was another college that had an AI create an actual moving body, or a moving little
a dude to walk around.
Yes, that can walk on its own. So now you have like I said, I think I brought it up before, where you have the liquid metal that can go through, and it was a bot that actually was made of liquid metal that could go through a maze. I mean, it's super tiny, like a little Lego guy. But now think about it. You have self-replicating robot. You have liquid metal that can go through. You have an actual AI that can create a bot. Put all those three things together, and now we're actually in Terminator time.
Well, yeah, we've recreated the Terminator movie. And one of the problems, though, is that concerns me is we have no regulatory standards monitoring over some of this, and that there's no universal standard or policies or codes that would protect people or secure it and make it safer or make it right. Nobody's monitoring that. There are several supercomputers, the quantum computers. They have yet to tap into those. I think once they've learned to utilize those, then some of the things that we're talking about will explode. Yes, Rick.
So everybody kind of knows that tech billionaires don't like to talk about it, but they're all building like end of the world bunkers to run away. Like if things go really bad, they can, go live underground for 6 months until things clear up. And I don't know that you need to do that, but if I were concerned about that, I would look at trying to move to a small Baltic or Nordic country with a nimble government like Estonia, that has a small enough, smart enough government that they may be able to, save their country. The US's government is a bunch of old guys, a lot of them anti-science, and we're not able to keep up with tech. But there are some countries that might survive better if tech gets really scary.
Well, there's some countries that are utilizing tech the way that it was intended to be utilized. I'm real impressed. Again, Colombia is probably one of my favorite. And to me, they are becoming the Silicon Valley. They're, Medellin is. But, Russia, claims to be the best in tech. Israel claims to be the best in tech and warfare. But I think it all gets down to what you're using it for. It's a conversation my husband and I would have all the time as engineers is, you can do all of this stuff you want, but what is the intent and purpose and what are you using it for? And unfortunately, we are out of time. I do want to tell everyone, go to podtv.tv, support our content, support podtv.tv. We have, we're selling books of people that we have interviewed. We have a store with, our logo and items, but continue supporting us. We want to thank everyone for watching us. Merry Christmas. And I look forward to seeing you guys hopefully next Tuesday on our show. And we'll continue this conversation into 2024 as we talk about what's going to happen to us as we enter our political warfare that is coming up. And thank you, everyone, for watching us. Have a great holiday.
Bye.